I think taking the time to continually assess and adjust and discuss with the people around you, I think that's important, and that's fun, and that's challenging, and that's what makes it great.
This is Intentionally Ever After. Join intentional lifestyle coach Joe Bukartek for a series of personal conversations and coaching sessions with various people about how living with intention shows up for them.
Greetings, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Intentionally Ever After. Today, I am tickled to be chatting with my dear friend, Mr. Adam Davis. Adam, welcome.
Thanks for having me. I'm also excited to be here with you, Joe. So, my name's Adam. I live in upstate New York. I've been here for 15 years, and I'm here with my wife, and I've got two young kids who are 6 and 3. I've got way too many hobbies to list. And, I think we're going to talk about being intentional, and that's something that is important. And professionally, I am vice president of a manufacturing company, and that's awesome. And that's why I've been here for 14 years.
That is awesome. And actually, you kind of going through your brief professional bio made me realize something. So I used to be an academic advisor, and I would bring you up, my former one-time college roommate, in how it is possible to change one's major.
Yeah, I changed my major 5 times as an undergrad because who really knows what they want to do with their life? And I ended up with a degree in forest science, and I worked in the woods for maybe about 2 years, and it was work. And I love being outside. It makes me feel good. But working outside, especially in situations where there are so many ticks and snakes, like I wasn't sitting down to take lunch or anything just because I'd come home with 100 ticks on me, literally. And when I moved to upstate New York here, I assumed I'd be working outdoors, and now I spend most of my day on the phone. So I've decided really professionally, it's most important to me who I'm doing something with and that it's challenging versus what I actually do.
So it sounds like you've come full circle, and it sounds like after living with some experience, you were able to formulate your decisions and decide where you wanted to go next.
For sure. Yeah, and that's partly being intentional about it. That's partly luck and circumstances and taking things as they come.
I just wanted you to know how many, it's been countless lives that you've affected, college students. And yet I may have taken some liberties that, depending on who I was talking to, just how many times I decided that you had changed your major. But 5 was actually the average. I think I made it upwards of 7 times, depending on how strong a point I was trying to make.
I really do believe life is a journey, and it changes at different times. And my role with my company has changed many times, from operations to safety to human resources to operations to now I'm thinking about our customers and our sales and our pricing and our customer service and those things. So it's all, who knows what I'll be doing in 5 years.
Awesome. Well, I will be sure to check back in on you. But not in between. Just, you and I will speak again in 5 years, but not anytime after this.
I'll settle for that.
Adam, what does it mean to live intentionally?
I think for me, being intentional is taking time to think about what's really important. And then once I've identified those things for me, making sure that I'm taking the time to do those things, and that's how I'm spending my time. So for me, I think that breaks into 3 main categories. There's personal, which has to do with just me as an individual. There's family, and there's professional. And I'm one person just like everybody else, but I think it's important for me to think of things that way, and they all work together. And if any of those parts of my life is not going well, or I'm not feeling good about any of those parts of my life, it's going to affect the others. So I try to have balance and know what works in those spots and try to make sure I'm doing it.
I love that. Those are great categories. Actually, I just had a conversation with someone, and that's exactly how they chose to bucket. They call them buckets. The 3 buckets for them is that's how they kind of filtered and viewed things, how they engage with the world. Would you care to go into some level of detail as to how things look when things are going well in each bucket?
Sure. I think for me personally, and I start with that, like I always think of the analogy, like if the plane's going down, you put the mask over your own face first. And I don't think I can be good for my family or for my coworkers if I'm not taking care of myself. So I really try to prioritize getting good sleep. And I guess I'm coming out of having 2 really young children, and I've come to understand how important sleep is, how it affects my energy, my memory, just my general mood. I think I'm such a better listener when I'm feeling good and refreshed. So I'm sleeping, I'm exercising, and just generally being active. Something else that I've wrestled with a lot over the years. I was married for 10 years before we had my son and could do whatever I wanted on the weekends. Had, basically unlimited time. And like I mentioned earlier, I've got too many hobbies. And so over these last couple of years, prioritizing what do I really want to do with that now much more limited free time has been a challenge at times. And I think I'm in a good place with that, just enjoying what time I do have and not thinking, oh, if only I had more time, I could do this. Or if I only had more time, I could do that. It's just enjoying what I do is important. From a family perspective, my wife and I have really tried to do things on purpose and be intentional about how we're working through our responsibilities as parents and how we're working together. So things that we do that have worked very well for us. We read to our kids every night. We alternate nights. And so we take turns. We each get to do that. It also helps us get a little bit more free time, recharge our batteries, those kinds of things. We also give each other a night out each week. So last Thursday, she went to dinner with a friend. Friday, I went and had a drink with a friend. And, she and I are both our own people. We've got things that we like to do that make us feel good, and almost scheduling out our time to make sure that we're able to do those things, I think helps us not only feel good, but also feels like we're in it together. Something that we do together as a family, like we have dinner together every night. And, we always ask kids, what was your favorite thing today? That's a great habit that I wouldn't ever want to lose. And the last one that I'll mention is just, like I said, I'm kind of an outdoor person. It's part of what I do and what I love. And my kids, when they get older, whatever makes them happy is what I want them to do. But try to share the things that I love with them. And so we go on a lot of little adventures. And we're lucky to live in a spot where we've got a bit of public land behind us, and there's a creek and woods, and we'll go on adventures back there. And it might be collecting walnuts or going to look for a mulberry tree so we can pick berries, or catching crayfish in the creek, and just different things like that. And maybe there's a purpose or maybe there's not, but just getting outside and finding something to do has been something that when we're doing that, things are good. Professionally, my role has evolved. Our company has really evolved. And we've got 12 physical manufacturing locations. Half of those are in the state of New York. Now we stretch down the East Coast as far down as North Carolina. And when I started here, we were a much smaller company. And I felt like I knew everybody's name and I knew about their kids and I knew what they liked to do on the weekends. And part of what I loved about coming to work was just walking through a plant and stopping in and saying, hey, such and such, how was your kid's baseball game this weekend? And as we've grown, I can't do that anymore. It's just impossible. And that's been hard to accept. And so that has kind of forced me to be more deliberate with my time and who I'm spending it with. And that's a challenge because some people I just love shooting the breeze with, and that doesn't necessarily always get things done. I think I've naturally always had this fear of suffocating myself with a schedule and a calendar and, losing freedom by doing that. But probably the main thing that I have to do professionally is just put things on the calendar with folks and make sure that I'm talking with people that way and I'm connecting with people that way and being a resource for them that way. Because if I don't do that, I just don't spend my time in the best way to where I'm helping others the best.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Well, it sounds like the things you want to insist upon, it makes sense more and more to put it on a calendar because of your expanding roles, perhaps.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the folks that I work with are also not connected to a physical location. They're not going into work somewhere. And so I think part of what's important for me is to help people have those connections with where they work. And so it is definitely, talk about how their weekend was and, all those kinds of things. And at the same time, as we've grown, I can't just talk about those things. I've got to make sure that, we get work done and I'm a resource for those people when they need it. And getting it on the schedule, I think, helps make sure that we have fun and, we're building personal connections. And then we're also, getting some work done.
So, as far as making sure you do things by putting it on the calendar, what are some maybe non-traditional or atypical things you would put on a calendar? And maybe it's, shooting the breeze with someone, but I'm wondering about like family stuff as well.
Yeah. So professionally, I can't say this is something that I've done a ton of. And, we're recording this here in January of 2022, and it's kind of been a funny 2 years. And, maybe I should be careful with how I use the word funny because it's, the parts of the last 2 years have been pretty bad.
Funny, we'll put in quotes.
Yes. But, I met somebody last Friday at a coffee shop and, we talked about what success looks like for that person. And just getting out of the office or getting off of Zoom and, sitting down with somebody in a coffee shop is like, it's great. And it just feels good. Went for a hike with somebody, I guess it was 2-3 weeks ago. And it's, it was during work hours where maybe 20% of the time we talked about things that were going on in our lives. And then the rest of the time we're talking about work stuff, but trying to do it in a different way that is fun. And it's something that this person and I both enjoy. And so if we can get some work done and help each other and feel good while we're doing it, like that to me is awesome. And so that kind of stuff goes on my calendar. And if I'm proactive about finding opportunities for those things, they're going to happen versus, oh, I'm just going to call this person and we're going to chat on the phone about it. Personally, we've got a shared calendar and, we put our stuff on there so that, my wife and I can see what the other person has. And we talk about what do we want to do and when, and, she's got a volunteer event this evening and that's great. I'll hang out with the kids and we'll do dinner and all those good things. And just having it on a calendar is helpful and talking about it helps. Something I struggle with, because what I'm most likely to do with my time off is go fishing or go for a hike or go hunting. And those things are weather dependent. And so maybe this is something that's specific to me. And maybe I'm a little bit of a baby because I'd rather not go fishing in the rain. But even just going fishing, it is helpful to put it on the calendar because if not, I'll get to next Thursday and say, maybe I won't go if it's not on the calendar. So.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. It's not a guarantee that you'll do the thing, but it's a guarantee that you'll consider doing that thing.
It helps get it done more often than it would otherwise.
Do family dinners appear on your calendar?
No, we do pretty well have dinner together every night. And so if we've got something planned that interrupts dinner, then it's a dinner with 3 instead of a dinner with 4. But I'd say that the family dinner is it's just a thing. It happens every day.
It sounds like it's already internalized into your systems, both of you, or all of you.
Yeah. And that was one of those things. I think, we were both, I'd say, lucky to grow up in houses where we had family dinners every night. And so when she was pregnant with our first, and we talked about like, what are the things that we want to do, together as a family, that was really high on the list. And I've probably talked more so far about what are the things that we want to do as individuals versus family, but we want to, it's also important for us to do those things together as a family. And I think dinner is a great place to start.
So what kind of ceremony or practice do you and she have around discussing what you have on the calendar?
This used to be simpler before we had kids. It got tougher for a bit, and it's getting easier now where weekend mornings, I didn't mention this, we also take turns on the morning. So one of us gets up with the kids Saturday morning, the other one gets up with the kids on Sunday morning. And at this point, like our youngest is about to turn 4, and so she's more self-sufficient than she used to be. But on the weekend mornings, we sit down and we talk about lots of things and, what we want to do over the weekend and what we want to do the upcoming week. That's kind of our time. And it's great. We talk about money and finances and all those different important things. But weekend mornings over coffee it's a great time.
Excellent. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah. Often I'll reference a weekly marriage meeting that Melanie and I do. And whether you call it that or not, it's essentially those same things, right? You just recalibrating to the week ahead, and it's like a project management meeting of sorts, right?
That's right. I never quite thought of it that way, but I like that.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, you want to make sure you get all the things that you singularly and collectively want to have in your life, in your week, right? And oftentimes that shows up, in the end, it shows up on a calendar, right? In order for it to happen.
I'm curious what you think of this, but she and I were just talking about it the other day. I think in some ways we're all selfish people, and I want to take care of myself. I need to, and maybe it's because I'm selfish, maybe it's not. That's just a current thought that I've been having lately, but I want her to feel good and happy too. And maybe that's because I'm selfish, because I know my life is better. Like if she's happy and feeling good, we're better off as a family. Everything is better. And so, yeah, not just looking about things for me, even though I know things are better that way as well.
I totally agree with that. Yeah, I'd probably shy away from the word selfish just because I think
it's got some bad connotations.
Yeah, it's got some baggage along with it, but I'm totally in line with that, right? I preach, if you will, about living with intention. I believe everyone can have what they want in life, but they have to spend the additional time thinking about what that might be. Now, I'm not saying I can guarantee an outcome, right? There are a lot of external factors that exist, but getting at the essence of what you want is what I'm talking about, right? Getting to live the way you want. And that requires one to be selfish.
In a funny way. And I need to be careful with the word, because everybody has different ideas of what that word means. I should also say something that has worked for me over the years is like I like to go to the gym 4 to 5 days a week. And that kind of gives me time to where some days I don't think about anything. Some days I think about all kinds of stuff. My hobbies of fishing and hunting, they give me great time to think and reflect. And that has been really helpful to me over the years to kind of sort out what's important to me, what's less important to me. Maybe that's why I gravitate towards those things. Maybe it's not. I don't know. But I know that time to think I need it.
That sounds really beneficial. It sounds like those activities allow you also to block out other things, right? Given their isolation associated with them, perhaps, or whether you use them fully that way or not, it sounds like it creates the space to nurture that type of thought and reflection.
For sure. And you saying that triggers a thought for me that something I'm trying to do more of professionally, and not everybody can do this in their job, but just turn my phone and email off for an hour and focus on something. And, we've all got different things that we say are important, I think our phones are huge. They're an awesome tool and they can be a huge distraction. And same thing with emails. The world is probably still going to turn if my phone's off for an hour, or if I don't look at emails for an hour. And somebody who's in a customer service role, it's good for that person to answer the phone. But in my role, I think I'm most useful to people if I schedule time out like that, to where I shut off and focus and then come back.
Yeah, that sounds like a good challenge to undertake, perhaps. Maybe one that you want to boldly proclaim while we're recording this. It's
very helpful to me. And some weeks I do better than others. We'll say that.
All right. I'll let you off the hook there. You don't have to make any bold proclamation.
I appreciate that.
What have you said no to that has made a significant impact in your life?
I'm probably like a lot of people, and I want to say yes to everybody and everything. And I want to make everybody happy, which is impossible. And it's how I'm wired. So I think as I've gotten older, I've gotten better at saying no. And I've said I've got too many hobbies to have any chances of, being fulfilled by doing all of them. There's just not the time. And so, I love woodworking. I don't have time to do that anymore. And I just have to shove that equipment in a corner in the basement and say, someday I might come back to it, but it's just going to cause me stress if I try to do that. As I try to think of specifics, I was asked to be on a board last month, and I learned about the organization. It was awesome. And when I learned about it, I was like, I want to be a part of this. I want to help these people. I want to do all these things. And then I thought about it. I thought, what am I going to give up so that I have the time to do that? Because we've only got so many hours in the day. And so I thought, I don't want to give up anything to do it. And so I said no. And I think professionally, I've just had to limit over time. There's some folks there's projects I'd love to work on, and folks that I'd love to maybe just selfishly, back to that word, just enjoy talking to some people, and I'd love to talk with them, and I have to restrain myself from getting involved in every project or just shooting the breeze with some folks. And with the projects, they're going to go fine. I'm not needed most of the time. And so, and I know that's a general answer, but intentionally trying to narrow my focus a little bit helps me do better on what I am working on.
Does that come from overextending yourself previously?
Oh, yeah. Because I've got myself into trouble, which is, trouble might be not the perfect word to use there, but I would say yes to everybody for everything. And that's worse. Say, oh, I can help you with that. I'll do that. And then when something takes longer than I thought it would, because things take longer than we think they're going to anyway, and I'm letting somebody else down where maybe they do really need me and somebody else could have gotten it done on their own. So yeah, I think it's something that I was not good at. And I'm not saying I'm great at it now. I think that's a challenge for me and many people, is choosing what the most important thing for them to do at any time is. And you got to say no all the time to make that happen, unfortunately.
But saying no, it sounds like, is the preferred option in this case, because you believe it'll better serve you and or others?
In my current role at work, the most important thing for me is we have an awesome team of people. And that's been the coolest thing with our growth as a company, is we've been able to add so many awesome and talented people. And if I do something, it's taking that opportunity away from somebody else. And so I want to be there to support, teach, cheerlead, but I don't want to rob people of, the opportunities that I had along my way. And we're so much better as an organization and as a team of people if more people can do more things, then that's that's the best for everybody. So
Who is someone you admire, and what do you admire about them?
I admire lots of people, and I admire a lot of different things about a lot of different people. So that's the vague part of my answer. Specifically, one of the luckiest things that's happened to me in my life is this company that I came to work for. I think we moved here and I was 26, and I worked for these two guys, they wouldn't want me to say that I worked for them. Their names are Rich and Will, and they're just two of the kindest, smartest, hardest working people. And my life is so different because I got to learn from them. And just those three tenets of be kind, work hard, and make sure that you're thinking through what are you trying to do. And I admire the heck out of those two guys.
Are these two guys still part of the equation?
Yeah. And so, for years, the three of us would get together and chat about things, and they taught me a lot. They let me make mistakes and learn from my mistakes, so yeah, talk with them all the time. And we've we have added people to that group as well. And, they're why I've stayed where I am for 14, 15 years. And, I plan to retire from here. Like, there's no reason why the grass is not green. I don't think it's pretty great here.
What do you imagine some people admire about you?
We did a pretty good exercise at work. It was a year ago now. And, there were 7 of us. And we went around the room and said, what do you admire most about each person? And what's the thing that you would like for them to be better at or do differently? And the really interesting thing to me about that exercise was, for the most part, what everybody said people's greatest strengths or what they most admired about that person also had a real connection to what folks would say, oh, you could do this better. And so what pretty much everybody said about me was that I was a thoughtful person. And that's nice to hear. And because that's important to me, because I do try to be thoughtful. And like I said, I want to make everybody happy, and that's important to me. And so if people feel that way, that's great. So since I framed this way, folks would also say, hey, you should be more decisive. And I might argue with that a little bit, because often I'd say, why make a decision if you don't have to yet? Let's keep learning and see where we go. But there's also times where I want to think everything through, and I want to hear from everybody. And I think people appreciate that, and it can mean that we move slower as well.
What area in your life feels just about perfect?
My marriage is pretty well perfect. And I think in a marriage or any other relationship, that doesn't mean that it's perfect. It just means that you can talk through things and share ideas and talk about frustrations and all those things, and come at that from a place of trust and dialogue. And so that's the thing that comes to mind for me first.
Do you bring your thoughtfulness to your marriage?
Geez, I think so. You could ask her some other time. I like to think that I do. I also think that we've evolved over time to where there's things I wasn't thinking about that, she had to bring up to me. And an example of that, like I said, that I like to exercise. I would go to the gym every morning before work for years before our son was born. And I would leave the house at 5:15, and I'd go to the gym, get cleaned up, go to work. And then when our son was born, I wanted to keep doing that. Like, that made me feel good doing that. And so in my head, I'm like, well, if I feel good, I'm a good part of this family unit and all these things. And after a couple months, my wife was like, you're getting to do this and I'm not. And that was a good conversation. And we adjusted. And so, yeah, just because I try to be a thoughtful person doesn't mean that I've thought of it all, because there's lots of things that I could do better.
But it sounds like you still got a version of that where you were able to get what you wanted from that activity. The practice appeared differently now that you had children, but you still got to get it.
Yeah, in the end, I think we found something that worked, and we made sure that we found time for her to exercise because that was important to her. And so in the end, we got what we each wanted, and that's the goal.
Well, Mr. Davis, it sounds like you're living a pretty intentional life. Are there other thoughts that you'd like to share, whether they've come up during our conversation or prior?
I'm trying to think here, and nothing's totally jumping to mind. I think the only other thing that I would say is I do feel like it's an evolution. And, I guess I've kind of gotten at that before, but just because something is some way now doesn't mean it will change. Like that's the sure thing in life, I think, is that it's always changing. And so I think taking the time to continually assess and adjust and discuss with the people around you, I think that's important and that's fun and that's challenging and that's what makes it great.
Such a good sentiment. Yeah, I agree. And since I agree, we're going to end right there so that we don't have to open another can of worms. I was trying to bring in a fishing metaphor, and that's the best I had.
I've got a bunch, and I'm trying to think of one now, but I got nothing on the spot here.
Well, you can record some after the fact, and I'll splice them in. That'd be great. Adam, thanks for taking the time and thinking about these questions, and it's always fun to reconnect with you. It's been too long. I'm glad we're reconnected, reunited. It feels so good. Really appreciate your time.
No, I appreciate you having me, and it's been great for me to think about these things. And to do this together here with you. So thank you.
This has been Intentionally Ever After, hosted by intentional lifestyle coach Joe Bukartek. If you would like to have your own intentional conversation with Joe on or off the air, visit intentionallyeverafter.com. Thanks for listening.